Hi everyone, I hope that everyone is doing well. I wanted to come on and film another video. Joanna had sent another question slash subject to talk about, so I wanted to get on here and talk about it. She wrote, how to create boundaries and deal breakers and leaving when someone oversteps or crosses them the first time. A lot of people don't have any in place and just deal with anything just to have a man or partner, um, or just have a man. So yes, I will say that the old me definitely put up with, obviously, for my first book, a ton of, unacceptable crap from the last individual, and then obviously people before that, correct, just to have a man. A lot of people entertain things that they just shouldn't, right? Because of many things, society and societal pressures will tell women that you're getting old, you don't want to be difficult, you want to be understanding. And I've mentioned a lot of this in previous videos. The issue with all of that is you're being an enabler, and then two, more importantly, you're betraying yourself, right? You're stuffing things down and you're portraying what you yourself need and know instinctually what is right and what is wrong, right? So when someone is mistreating you, again, it doesn't have to be by putting their hands on you. It can just be, and it just also doesn't have to be relationship, intimate. This can be a friendship. This can be, any a relationship at work or anything. So it doesn't just have to be romantic, though the focus. You know, there's a lot of work that has to be done on a personal level, right? So why do we think it is okay to allow poor behavior? And then in some cases, bad behavior, like horrific behavior, right? So it usually goes back into childhood, and I know some of you are rolling your eyes, but that's just the fact, right? And until you can pinpoint your exact issue, your exact wound, you're not going to be able to move forward, because if you can't identify it, how can you rectify it? And then how can you move forward from it? So for me, I've made the connection back to my father. My father was not present, was not around, and when he was, he fed me a lot of bull, and so in a sense, or not in a sense, I was groomed to accept breadcrumbs. I was groomed to accept that people can say one thing and do another, and no matter how I felt about it, I had to smile and be okay, because that's what this person, my father, an authority figure over me, did. And then I had to be okay with it, and I had to respect him, because God says I have to respect my father and I have to respect my mother. So there's all of these layers, right? You have God, because when you're growing up, you're learning about all of these different things. So I often struggled with, how do I, honor my mother and my father? My mother, I had no problem with honoring. It was my father that I had the problem with honoring, because he would say, I love you, but then his actions would show, I don't give a shit about you, right? Would never call, would never show up. And when he did have plans to show up, he'd say, I'll be there at noon. He would show up at 9 p.m. and stay for 30 minutes and then leave with no explanation, no phone call, no nothing, right? I mentioned in my book, I would often get Valentine's Day candy, if I got it, usually in June for my birthday, and my birthday was in May, right? So it's just this complete inconsistent, really shitty behavior from a narcissistic individual, selfish individual, man child. You can, whatever the label is you want to use it, the behavior is still the same. And the unfortunate damage to the child is still the same, right? So in turn, I learned, groomed, to go through life. And this isn't just in my my intimate relationships, but it did stem from there. So I learned, groomed, to think that it was okay for men to come in and out and to like give the bare minimum, breadcrumb me along. And obviously, I didn't know the terminology that I'm using now. I'm helping to try and make a quick, connection. Um, that they meant that they probably loved me, but if I could do more, if I could be perfect, then maybe they would stay and choose to stay because they would finally choose me. So that's an oversimplification of how I figured everything out for myself around the wound and made a circle to move forward. You know, it's obviously took time and years and like a lot of digging and a lot of work to be able to make all of those connections that I'm making super simple for the sake of time in these videos. But that's just the truth of it. So then you take that and you move into life and you'll learn that if I say no, someone gets upset. A healthy individual will not care. Hey, can you do me a favor? No. Well, that makes me upset. I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's my right and my free will to say no. I don't want to do you a favor, because also I don't have to. No one owes anyone anything, including an explanation. No one is entitled to your energy. No one is entitled to you. Not your mother, not your father, not anyone. So no means no, no matter who or what it is. And if the other person doesn't like what you're saying, that is a them problem, not a you problem. So you are entitled to tell someone no, right? And this is obviously meant in a clear, not stupid way, in the sense of, if someone tells you no, don't touch me, your right, or your want, not your right, your want to do that doesn't supersede their no, right? Because I imagine someone sitting here watching the video thinking, oh, well, what I want overrides everything. No, that's not true. And that's not a fact. The individual who is on the receiving end of something, their response matters more than what your desire is. So I have every right to say, no, I don't want to do you a favor. No, I don't want to have this conversation right now. No, I no longer want to be in this relationship. So what society and interrelationships has done has made people want to be nice and want to be kind. And I think that there is a definite difference of being nice and being kind, right? I don't think I'm very nice. I think I'm kind now, right? Before, I used to be everything. I was a people pleaser. If you wanted something, I would go bend over backwards to give you what you wanted, even if it was betraying myself, because it was more important for me, for you to be comfortable and for you to be happy, regardless of how and what that did to me. Now I don't care. I care about myself more, and I value myself more, higher than I do anyone else, right? Including anyone, right? It doesn't matter. I come first. The only day that will change is when I have children, then they will come first. So, it's just super important to, really hone that in, right? So society, and everything has made us think, especially as women, that what we want doesn't matter and we have to sacrifice ourselves to make the whole happy. And that's just not the case. We need to rewire and rethink that, and and have boundaries. And here's a quote that an old dance teacher had said to me many, many, many years ago. He said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Not the fifth time, not the seventh time, not the 556th time, right? Believe them. And in the last several years, that has really proven to be so true. And it's funny because, yeah, people have off days, right? Like, you might catch me, if you caught me on a day of, if you caught me on the day that I was diagnosed with cancer, and you stopped me on the street, or you had an interaction with me, I was not myself, right? This didn't happen, but I'm saying as an extreme example, you might not get the best me, right? But for me, I always apologize. I always make amends. So when people show you who they are, believe them the first time, it's using your intelligence, right? Taking into account, you know, what the context of what everything is, you know. So of course there are people who, you know, are having a moment and it's not their best self, you know, and it's not they're not showing up, you know, who they are because of pressure sometimes. However, if someone has a reputation, um, and you are witnessing things countlessly, time and time again, where you're just like, this person's not a good person. And you can tell this by the fruit of the tree, right? It's clear. If you're a good person and you go in the world and you do good, genuinely speaking, generally speaking, there's good around, right? Like there's bad things typically aren't happening, right? Like you're things are just, you know, going normal, you know, not to imply that being good, you know, exempts you from anything bad, but you know what I'm saying. And then you have people who just aren't good people. There's always a drama, right? Somebody's always has wronged them. You know, they never get what they want. They never have this, they never have that. And it's this negative, negative, negative spiral. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you know, those people, like you feel exhausted after being around them. You actually probably run because you don't want to hear the latest drama, right? So what I've learned in the last few years is that when people show me who they are, I believe them, I trust them, and I remove myself. Like I said previously, it would be very hard, but now I look at it like this. If I stay or I endure and I let them think that it is okay to do whatever it is, no matter how small it is, then that means these little tiny infractions are only going to keep coming, and they're going to cumulatively increase until like something really bad, right? And why do I have to wait for something to be really bad to be like, I don't want to be here, right? So Joanna, I say to you and everyone else, it's super important to really, really listen to yourself, really come into your body and go, I don't like this. I don't like the way I'm feeling. I'm not happy. I'm not myself. And despite me wanting to be in a relationship, or despite me wanting whatever it is that that relationship is, because like I said, it doesn't have to be romantic, I want to love myself more than I want this situation, this label, this whatever, right? Because it doesn't matter that you want to be in a relationship with an individual so much so that you're willing to sacrifice your happiness, you're willing to sacrifice your health, you're willing to sacrifice your life. Because that's what ultimately it comes down to. Everything is literally life and death. There is nothing that is not that. You know, like, debate me on it. There is nothing that is not that. Because ultimately, things come down to a single point. It's either bringing you to joy, to wholeness, to fullness, to light, or it's taking you in the opposite direction, which is death. And yes, both, you will die eventually, but like, I don't think you want to be taken out by like a negative experience and a negative entity of sorts versus truly living in your power and your truth. Those are two very different things. So the moment that someone shows you, and some of these people straight up tell you, you know, they just straight up tell you, I'm not looking for anything serious, but we can see where it goes. No, no, no. They literally said, I am not looking for anything serious, but we can see where it goes. That translates into, you're into me, I don't really give a shit, but I'll allow you to take up my time and I'll take up your time until it just doesn't work out anymore, right? Because they're going to reap all the benefits and you think that you're going to be able to change their mind. You know, it's crazy. Like, you cannot change someone's mind, believe them, right? You know, when they say, oh, my ex was crazy, like I said, very rarely what is the ex crazy? Very rarely, you know. You want to start to wonder, well, what transpired? And then at that point, I don't even actually care. I don't want to know. Anyone that starts off with and then goes into a whole dissertation about their ex, I'm not interested. You know why? Because I go on dates, I go on, many things. I don't bring up my exes. Why? Because it's insignificant. We all have a past. It doesn't matter. I don't have to sit there and berate and bring up, things of reasons of why. What's more interesting, what I like to share is like what I've learned about myself from my past relationships, right? How have I grown? And I ask other people when I'm dating, well, what have you learned from your previous relationships? I'm not interested in hearing you talk shit about someone that I don't know and they're not here to defend themselves, right? Like, that's crazy. So really, it's about setting boundaries and deal breakers. And ultimately, only you can do that for yourself because only you know what that is for you. For me, prior to that relationship, my deal breaker was I didn't date anyone with children. I just didn't. I wanted to be number one, and I wanted to create and build with the individual from scratch with ourselves. I didn't want to have to consider another individual to like dictate things. I have my own reasons of which I don't have to share. I'm sharing some. So that was my deal breaker. I don't want to date someone with children. Another deal breaker was age. I didn't want to date someone that was too much older than me because if they didn't have children at that point, they probably didn't. And I didn't want someone to take away the possibility for me at that time. So already I had two deal breakers that individual failed miserably at. They lied to me. They said, oh yeah, I would love to have a child with you, and told other people, like many people, like went so far as to say, I'm gonna go make sure that my sperm is good. All of it was bullshit, right? It's in the book. So you can go there if you're interested, but ultimately, if I had stuck to my guns of deal breaker, you have kids, not interested. Deal breaker, you're too old for me. I would have not had that whole experience, right? Because it just didn't matter. Like, it didn't matter how nice you were or whatever else, because you had two things that I didn't want. But I decided, oh, maybe I'm being difficult or maybe I'm missing out because, no. Moving forward, my deal breakers are my deal breakers, and unfortunately, sorry. Like, the answer is no. And, if I say something if I say I don't like that, and someone then continuously pushes and does that, I'm out. Whether it's a relationship or a friendship. Why? Because you don't respect me. And, and it really does come down to that. If you don't respect me, what are we doing, right? There's no conversation to be had because you don't respect me. So therefore, there's no communication happening because you're going to do what you want to do and you're just laughing at me, right? So it's so important to see things and people and situations for exactly what they are, and trust your own discernment that you do have when you stop suppressing yourself and you stop allowing bullshit to get in the way. When you feel anxiety about something, that's telling you. If you have something in your head, I think that they're cheating on me, why do you need evidence? Like something's telling you that, and So why do you want to be in a relationship that makes you feel that way, right? I think that if that's the case, you need to take yourself out and you need to get into therapy and you need to do the work, right? That means that you have wounds going on. So, because it could be twofold. Maybe they're not cheating on you and maybe you're projecting all of your wounds and you're bleeding all over them. Still, you need to get out of there and you need to work on yourself before you can really bring anything whole into any relationship, be it romantic, friendships, or whatever. And then you have the flip side with your intuition's telling you, and because you've seen things and Either way, you have to get out of there because it's toxic and the only outcome is not good for you. So it's just super important to know your deal breakers and know what your boundaries are and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not. And I promise you shouldn't be willing to tolerate a whole lot, right? I believe in the golden rule. I treat people the way that I want to be treated. I hold people to the same standards as I hold myself. And I often get a lot of flack from it, from friends and family saying, well, you're exceptional. And I don't say that to gloat or whatever, but I hold myself to the highest of standards. I hold myself accountable. I believe in integrity because without integrity, nothing works. Try getting in a boat with a hole in it. You may get pretty far, but on your way back, you're going to run into some trouble, right? So I often screw myself because I I hold people to crazy high standards, crazy expectations that I meet for myself. And when I don't meet them for myself, I have a powwow on the side and be like, okay, well, what did you learn, and what's getting in the way of you being your best self? And if it means I got to go back into therapy and work on a very specific issue, or I got to journal, or I got to get into touch with friends and figure it out, I have to figure it out, because in the end, I can't move forward, and I refuse to hurt others because of my own lack of or willingness to get to the bottom of it, right? So, some takeaways: journal, get to know, what are your wounds? What are you hiding? What is hurting? What needs to be healed? What are your deal breakers? True, honest deal breakers. I don't want to date someone that has children, or I'm willing to date someone that has children. However, the children need to be 12 and up, right? You know, whatever that is for you. Maybe you're open to dating someone with children because that doesn't matter to you, right? You know, your deal breaker can be, you know, their actions must, you know, match their words. You can't say you love me, or that you like me, or that you care about me, and then your actions show the complete opposite. Because both of those things can't be true, and actions are always true, whereas words are not, right? And then you have to have boundaries in which you say, hi, my name is Kia, and my boundary is you show up when you say you're going to show up. And if you can't, you need to give me ample time to tell me why, and make plans and like reschedule or whatever. And then the point that comes after making a boundary is you then have to enforce it and hold them accountable, as well as yourself. So then if you cancel and then you choose not to abide by my boundaries, I will remove myself, and that's it. I don't have a 3 strikes and you're out rule anymore. I have the first time you do something that shows me who you are, in my opinion, I'm out, right? You know, I'm out, because it's not hard to be a good person. It is not hard to treat people the way you want to be treated. Obviously, things happen, emergencies happen, but it's all in how someone articulates things to you and how they show up. And you will know in an instant if it's worth giving them, you know, a little rope and then keeping your eye on it, or if it's just like, I'm out. You know, life is short to waste time on people who just don't care about themselves, right? You have to care about yourself, and you have to work on being your whole self before you can enter into a partnership and bring anything of value. Because how dare you show up and demand things of the other person that you do not embody and that you do not have, right? So, you know, that's my spiel on, you know, how to get there. And I'm just going to read it one more time to make sure I didn't get anything. How to create boundaries and deal breakers, and leaving when someone crosses them or oversteps them the first time. And it's truly just holding yourself accountable. You know what's right and wrong. You know what's acceptable for you, and you don't have to justify it to anyone else. They don't have to understand it. Your family doesn't have to understand it. Only you do, right? And if they do something, you don't like it, you're out. Like I said, recently I was talking to someone. They said a few things that were off to me, and I was like, you know what? That's off. I don't have to explain it to them. I don't have to have a whole meeting about it. I'm out. Why? Because I value my peace. I value my life. I value everything over this individual. I don't need to hang out with them for 3 months and have chaos and possibly other things come into my life because I need to know with certainty, right? You know, don't need to know that. I can tell something's off, I'm out. Also, a really great book that you can read is by Nidra Glover Twab, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. I always take the jackets off, but I found it, you know, extremely helpful. Set Boundaries, Find Peace. She goes into great detail. It's a guide to reclaiming yourself, of, you know, communicating your boundaries, what boundaries are, all of the things. So if this video was helpful, great. If it wasn't, sorry, did my best. But this book is amazing. I've read it several years ago. I still keep it on my shelf, and I go back to it. It's just a really great read, and I highly recommend it. Anyhow, I hope that you guys stay well, stay choosing yourselves. And again, if something's off, just excuse yourself, right? You know, you are not required to stay, and no one is entitled to you. They're not entitled to your energy. They're not entitled to your explanations. You know, you can be kind, you know, you don't have to be nice. Or you can be nice, but you don't have to be kind. Anyway, you get what I'm saying, right? You don't have to sacrifice and betray yourself for anyone. And if anyone's asking you to do that, there's your sign right there. So the first time something happens, get out. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And don't blame yourself if you believe that you stayed too long. I could have, I should have. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Everything is learning. We are living, we are learning. When you know better, you do better.